Toula's Tips for Caregivers. Health is on the air with Toula Wooten, your source to go for resources and information to help you in this rewarding but sometimes challenging role. Now here's Toula.
Well, welcome everyone to another episode of Toula's Tips for Caregivers. For those of you who know me, and I've created a little bit of a following over the last 10 years, which I'm thankful for, I am here to serve caregivers, to reach out to caregivers of seniors, frail seniors who are ill, and caregivers who really truly are struggling to be able to take good care of them. I've been doing this radio show for a little over 10 years now, and it has been a blessing to me to be able to meet so many caregivers in our community, and now nationally and internationally through the internet, which is we're all doing these days because we can't get together anymore. So thank you for tuning in. I have a special guest today. He's someone who's become a dear friend over the last 5 to 6 years. His name is Chris MacLellan. He also was a caregiver for a number of years for his partner, Richard. He also is a radio show podcaster, has his own show on caregiving. I'll let him tell you a little bit about that. And he's affectionately known in the community as the bow tie guy. So Chris, welcome to Toula's Tips for Caregivers.
It's great to be back on Toula's Tips for Caregiving. I think this is my third or fourth visit with you on your show. Oh, this is awesome.
It is, but you know what? I think it's been at least a year, maybe 2. I don't know. We've been busy doing other things.
We've been busy doing other things, and connecting in other ways. And as you know, that I'm getting ready to relaunch my Healing Ties podcast, and I'm looking forward to talking to you about an issue in caregiving that is not often talked about. It's about life after caregiving. So I really appreciate you reaching out and wanting to have this conversation today.
Well, thank you, Chris. I think it's a really important topic, and it's something that caregivers unfortunately don't think too much about while they're caring for a loved one or even a friend. A lot of people care for friends these days. We don't want to overlook that. But when you're in the throes of caring for a loved one, it is so easy to forget about yourself, the things you love to do, who you are, what identifies you, your hobbies, your interests, your friends, your other family members. People typically don't spend as much time on those things. My main advice for creating your good life after caregiving, because that's what you want, is a good, happy, positive life, is not to give up all those things while you were taking care of a loved one, because then you're just going to have to start all over, right?
Exactly. And as quick as caregiving starts and as unprepared as we are when it starts, the same holds true when it ends.
Yeah.
All of a sudden it's over. And while you may be caregiving for years, but that day comes and it's over, and it seems like, oh my God, that went by so fast. And what happened in between the beginning and the end to you, the caregiver? Because you're so intent on caring for somebody else, we forget to care about ourselves. Unfortunately, and that's why we do what we do, the advocacy that we do,
right,
is to let people know about why it's so important to have self-care while you're in the midst of caregiving.
And self-care, as we all know, encompasses a number of levels, if you will. It's your physical health, obviously. It's your spiritual health. It's your emotional health. And yes, your financial health. You don't want to neglect any of those things, because when you come out after caregiving, again, reestablishing those things can be very, very difficult. So let's start with the whole social aspect of it. We know that a lot of caregivers, unfortunately, isolate while they're taking care of their loved one. Talk to me a little bit about that.
Isolation actually is very prominent when you're involved as a caregiver. It happens gradually, and all of a sudden you sit back and you think, oh, no, wait a minute. I had these friends, I had these hobbies, I did this, I did that, and all of a sudden those slowly go away.
Yep.
And you find yourself trying to balance, your work and your life, and you're caring for somebody else. And what's the first thing that happens? You leave what you want to do behind for yourself.
Right.
And it's easier said than done, about self-care, but when you find yourself isolating, that's when it's so important to find that caregiver buddy, that person that you can talk to, that can share your innermost feelings and share your story, so that you can break out of that isolation. Because when caregiving ends, you almost have to reconstruct your life.
Yeah.
Your friends are going to be different. Your realities are going to be different. And if you can manage that, just a little bit of it while you're in the middle of caregiving, it's going to make life after caregiving just a tad bit easier.
We all need support, and we all need each other in everything we do, really. I know I do, not just caregiving, but everything. So, and caregiving is such a taxing role, such a challenging role. I don't understand why people feel like they have to do it all by themselves and go within and isolate. And when they do that, they often neglect other family members and friends, and those relationships get distance.
Right.
Obviously, they can't help but be. And so afterwards, you're trying to reconnect with people that maybe were once really important in your life. And that's not easy, because they're going to wonder, okay, now why now? And then as far as neglecting you, the hobbies, the interests, the things you love doing, stopping doing those. I know you can't do it as much, but completely giving them up is, in my view, one of the worst things you can do. I've heard so many females, I will say to me when their caregiving journey ends, whether it's an elder parent they cared for or it was a spouse, Toula, I don't know who I am anymore now that I'm not a caregiver.
In a way, it kind of like breaks my heart, but I understand it, because when you're in the middle of this caregiving, especially you're caring for somebody that you love, a spouse, a partner, a parent, you already have that pre-established relationship. And then you take on this caregiving role, which is, very meaningful and awesome, and something that, quite frankly, we're all kind of called to care for our loved ones. But then both of these relationships end at the same time. And what is our identity? Who are we when this is over? Caregiving changes people.
Well said.
I believe, hopefully, mostly for the better. But it does change people. And that's why we're doing what we're doing. We advocating and sharing our stories, because when we share our experiences, people that come behind us in the caregiving role, hopefully will be able to do just a little bit better than what we did in our experience.
Yeah, I hope people will listen and try to heed at least some of this advice. Chris, tell me about who you cared for and how it was or wasn't difficult to reestablish your life and your life patterns afterwards.
I know you and I met after Richard had made his life transition, and you would have loved the little one. He was a foot shorter than me, tough gentleman from Manhattan, full of life, done a lot of wonderful things in his life. One of the hardest things for him as his esophagus cancer progressed was asking for help. Yeah. He was so independent. We became closer, especially as the days got shorter.
Yeah.
But once, when I held him when he died, I knew that he was at peace. And I've said this many times before, that, my faith tells me I will see him again. My mind tells me he's forever pain-free. And my heart tells me he's standing right next to me. And I truly believe that. But the gap for me from then to where I am now is accepting that my life was different without him. The caregiving, especially towards the end, became very intense. And while you're in the middle of it, you just don't realize how difficult it is, because you're just set on doing
one task after
another. And then for me, after it ended, it was like, it's like a brick kind of hit me in front of my head. What am I going to do? And it's, and I'm very, very open and honest about my experience after it ended. I made a lot of poor emotional decisions and a lot of poor financial decisions. If there's a poster child of what not to do after caregiving ends, I'm it. I lived it because I was lost without the person that I loved. I tried to replace that person. You can never replace what you had. Luckily, along the way, like we do in this caregiving sphere, we meet terrific people that become lifelong close friends, like the person that I'm talking to right now.
Thank goodness for us, our relationship.
Right, and that's because we're comfortable in sharing our stories. And I get it that not everybody is comfortable with sharing their stories, but find that one person that you can, because it will make life after caregiving just a little bit easier.
What were one or two things that helped you turn that corner from making bad decisions to being able to embrace life? Because I know you're embracing life and all the joys of life now. You weren't doing that when I first met you. What really helped you kind of turn that corner?
Well, I think there was, I kind of look at two things. One is I was determined to finish my master's degree. And I had started that right as he had gotten ill and put that on hold. And, that master's degree for me was something that it was just important for me.
Mm-hmm.
And then, I can't pinpoint the day, but I know somewhere along the line, I woke up one morning and I just said to myself, you know what? Job well done. No matter what I thought that I could have done for him in those last few days was not going to change the outcome of his destiny. I don't have that control. I don't have that control.
No.
Of course, yes, I want to be selfish. I didn't want him to die, but I also didn't want him to. I wanted the Richard that was 3 years before he got sick, not the Richard that was lying in that hospice bed that I held when he died. I cherish that memory, but I also cherished the entire lifespan of our 11-year relationship. And it was, for me, it was that moment of just telling myself, job well done. And we all come to that at our own time, and it's okay.
Yeah, I'm glad you said that, because so many people have such deep regret after their caregiving experience. I wish I'd done this. I wish I'd done that. If I'd only said this, maybe.
I only said this. Exactly.
It wouldn't have changed the outcome.
It's not going to change the outcome, and I couldn't talk in this voice. If we were talking about this 5 years ago, I'd be in tears.
Yeah.
Because I was thinking, if I had stayed that one night at the hospice instead of going home, the only night I had not been with him in years, and when they gave him the morphine, then things would have been different. Well, he would have lived longer. I said, yeah, he could have lived another 2 weeks and been miserable. That was the selfish part of me, thinking that my caregiving cape can fix all this. He was just going to we were going to walk out of the hospice unit together and go home. It was unrealistic.
Yeah, it's easy, though, for people to go there. And I understand that. And that's because you love someone so much. It's really hard to come to terms with the fact that they're not going to be here anymore.
That's right. And, and two lives are forever changed when a life transitions. 2 lives or more. I mean, sure, Richard went on to, if you believe in the afterlife, like I do. Now he didn't, which we could do a whole other conversation on our conversations about that. But
yeah.
I take comfort in knowing, and it's taken me a while, that again he is pain free and he's in a better place. I would have liked to have been in that better place for me sooner than what it's taken me. But I'm there now, and I'm open. And I could say this, and I think this. For the past year now, I'm interested in finding somebody new and starting a new relationship, because I know it's going to be different, and it's okay.
Yeah.
And it doesn't have an impact on what I had before.
No, it won't lessen that at all. You will always still have that wonderful, loving relationship and hold it dear in your heart. But it is more than okay to move on. It's
More
what's
than okay.
best
Oh
for
my
you.
God. That's beautifully said, Toula. It's more than okay to move on.
And you know that's what he would want. And you know that in a healthy, loving environment that you live in now, you know that that's the best thing for you. We all need and want someone to love and to love us. So I'm
Exactly.
glad that you're there. I'm glad that you're learning new things. I know you're learning Spanish. I know you've taken some great trips. You've got a lot of joy in your life. It's the
I have a
bottom
lot of
line.
joy in my life. And I'd like to just kind of share with your listeners that you mentioned Spain. I did a 30 days in Spain in December 2019. And I came back and I say this to close friends and people like yourself, that I wish I'd have been in a position right after Richard died to do something like that for myself,
Yes.
because that's truly one of the first things that I really did for myself after he died. And what a life-changing experience it was. But I did it in my time. And that's what I would encourage people to believe in themselves, that when it's your time, you'll do the things that you need to do in order to help you move on in your transition.
And you'll know when it's your time. Everybody grieves differently. You know, so many people think, okay, I've had this first year of grief. I should be better now. I should move on. It doesn't work that way. Sometimes the second, third, and fourth year are harder than the first year.
You know, there's, as we both, you know, we're both authors. There's really, you know, there's no textbook on caregiving. There's plenty of theories about grief.
Yeah.
And we've been through it. But grief is personal.
Right.
And grief is real. And there's not one system that works for everybody.
It's everybody's way of grieving is right for them. There isn't one right for everyone, because we all feel differently. We all had different relationships that impacted us differently. So grief is, like you said, personal.
It's personal.
And it is, how you are grieving is right for you. Now, that said, there are some people who maybe have some complicated grief that need some help. I mean, and I'm a big believer in reaching out and getting help.
I did that myself. And again, it's having that awareness that you do need at times to step out and talk to an objective third person to help walk you through what you're dealing with. It's, you know, it's critical to your own mental health and well-being. And I, like you, I encourage that. I did it myself. But again, it's something you do in your own time. Right.
And you'll know when it is right for you. But like you said, it can be something that is so very, very helpful, because when you're in the throes of grief, your mind is so clouded. You can't really see sometimes other options that are there for you. And a person who, I don't want to say impartial, but isn't in that state of a clouded brain, but can be objective, and who cares about you and wants to help you, can give you some pointers for moving on. So again, for anybody that might be in that position right now, don't hesitate to reach out and ask for help. We all need it, you know. None of us get through life without needing help at some point or another. And this is a very difficult time for people. Let's talk about a couple of practicalities. In that first year, you know, all grief therapists say, don't make any big decisions during that first year. I think you're smiling because I think maybe you did that.
Well, some of it was out of necessity. Some of it, but I was so lost. I mean, I was living in Florida, no family. All my family's in a different part of the state. I was unhappy. My life was totally unhappy. I picked up and moved to New Orleans with my sister 6 months after Richard died. You know, that kind of started some of the spiral downward of where am I? Who am I with? Where am I going? What everything has changed. While I certainly loved my sister and was grateful to spend that time with her, I just wish I'd have been in a better emotional position to make better decisions than what I did right after he died.
Well, a lot of people do that, so don't beat yourself up. Forgive yourself, because a lot of people do that. And part of it is this feeling of, I have to escape this really hard, sad grief I'm feeling. And so if I go somewhere else, maybe I'll escape it. But you don't. You carry it with you.
You take it with them. You take it with you. It's part of your baggage.
Yeah, and it's going to be, a part of you for the rest of your life.
Mm-hmm.
It'll ease, and it won't hurt as much or as frequently, but it'll always be there because that's somebody you dearly loved. I think I read some time ago where the phrase that where there is deep grief, there was dear love, deep, deep love.
Very much so. That is a very, very true and very beautiful comment.
Right. So back to that point, don't make any big moves. Don't sell or buy houses. Don't jump into another relationship. A lot of people do that.
A lot of people do that.
Mm-hmm. During that first year. And again, you're not in a state where you can make good, rational decisions, unfortunately. So better to just wait on some of those things. Ride it out. You can't get to the other side of it without going through it. You have to feel it.
Most definitely. I couldn't have said that better myself. Thank you for sharing that.
Well, I think we've both been in that position, so we know. Anything that we're saying right now, again, hopefully we are saying things that will help someone.
Mm-hmm.
I've made mistakes. You've made mistakes. We've all done things like that. But you have to forgive yourself. Really important.
Self-forgiveness is so important in this. No matter what faith you might be coming from, you have to forgive yourself for so many things, especially in this role of caregiving. You're only doing what you can do.
And what you know to do. Sometimes you learn things after that maybe you thought, I could have done that, but you didn't know then.
No, I didn't know it. You've heard me say this before. Have you ever heard of or met anybody that had caregiving on their bucket list of things that they plan to do in life?
Never.
It's like, no, you've got to be kidding. We do it on the go. That's why it's so important for us. Just going to talk about us here at the moment and include all our listeners. Share your story as you feel comfortable. Story sharing is healing. It's validation, provides a little bit of respite and resources, and it allows people to really understand where you're coming from and where you've been and how you can be a part, how it can help you as well. When I do presentations, I get it announced as here's Chris MacLellan, an expert in the field of caregiving. You know what? I say, no, I'm not an expert. Everybody who is a caregiver is an expert. I'm somebody that has a story.
Right. I like that.
Yeah. I don't believe in this term expert caregivers. Every caregiver has a story to share. And in that sense, that makes them an expert.
And telling your story requires a little vulnerability, transparency, so it's not always easy. You hit on a point. It can be healing for yourself. It can be very, very helpful to those who are listening, obviously, because they need to know they're not alone.
It's amazing that you just said that, because that, when it happens, and it's like you think you're the only one doing this, because people don't talk about it. They're, it's better now than when we both started out, in this, when you started with your parents, and, caregiving for Richard started in 2011. Yeah. We didn't talk about it as much. Now it's kind of the buzzword. So, which is kind of, it's like, where have you people been? It's like buzzword. Yeah. This is if every caregiver went on strike today, the whole healthcare system would collapse. Well, everything else is collapsing right now, so why don't we?
It would collapse because caregivers truly are the backbone of our long-term care system. They really are. It's not the nursing homes or assisted living facilities. It's the family caregiver. So again, caregivers, pat yourself on the back. You've undertaken a big job that a lot of people would choose not to. And I, through my years as a medical social worker, saw lots of families absolutely choose not to. Always kind of bamboozled me, to tell you the truth, because
I can't get in touch with that. I can't get in touch with how that happens.
No, when you love somebody, you're going to have the opportunity to be a caregiver. That's just the bottom line. You've given some really helpful points. I appreciate it. We probably should wrap up since we're doing a podcast, and you and I can be really long-winded when we get to it.
Well, we need to get back to doing our hour shows. So I'm hoping that we can do that here real soon, especially on the Whole Care Network. That will be launching our new site here in about a month that you're a big part of. So
exciting.
As they say in radio, stay tuned for some really big, cool announcements coming up about your podcast and some other shows on the network.
Well, I'm really excited to be a part of the Whole Care Network and look forward to seeing where it's going as you are revamping it and growing. I think good things are coming. So thank you for all the work that you do in this field, but mostly for your care and compassion for others.
It really is, Toula, an honor to be your friend, and just always great to talk to you about something that is so meaningful to us, taking care of family caregivers. Thank you for the opportunity.
Thank you. Chris, thank you again for being on my show. Folks, you've been listening to Toula's Tips for Caregivers. I hope this show today has helped those of you who are caring for a loved one realize, one, this is not forever. You do want to get out of this role alive and well and healthy and be able to move on. And two, if you are already out of the caregiving role, I hope we've given you some helpful tips for this time of transition. You can do this. Love you guys. Many, many blessings to all.
Have you read the new book, Love Stories and Timeless Tips yet? It's by our own Toula Wooten with Toula's Tips for Caregivers. Toula is a caregiver too, as well as an expert on caregiving. You can get it in paperback or on Kindle at Amazon.com. The book is filled with touching stories of caregivers taking care of their loved ones. Each chapter has helpful ideas that we all can use. I love that Toula included a Toula's tip with each story. Her message to caregivers is clear. Take care of yourself so that you can take care of your loved one. This is a beautiful book for all caregivers to read, whether you're a part-time, full-time, or long-distance caregiver, or someone receiving care. You should get the book today. Just go to Amazon.com. Search for Love Stories and Timeless Tips by Toula Wooten.